everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley. Welcome back to another video. So Harry and Meghan's behavior surrounding the absolute devastation of the California wildfire disaster has been extremely problematic and very strange, very out of touch, almost like what are you thinking territory? Are you fully checked in? What's going on here? Because these mistakes are ones that you would think are very common sense, which has led a lot of people into a conversation about narcissists, specifically communal narcissists. I know Harry and Meghan to be some of the most obvious narcissists out there, in part because even the most narcissistic of public figures and celebrities simply don't court this much media attention. Harry and Meghan basically won't leave the public alone. The public has said no thank you, and Harry and Meghan still continue to thrust themselves upon us against our will. Harold and the Meg are constantly engaging with the very press that they have complained about and are frequently airing their thoughts, opinions, and personal lives to the public in emails and interviews and press releases and through their Archwell websites, statements and updates, all of it. They're constantly pushing themselves into the media and the public eye. Part of this is obviously probably just the way Harry thinks things are supposed to go, because that's how it's been when he was with the royal family as a working royal and what he saw with his family of working royals. And he's never been on the outside of that. And Meghan, as we know, enjoys that sort of attention. They're both very grandiose, very self-obsessed, ridiculous. And we have proof of that in the past videos I have made. There's a long history of it. So if you are new to this saga, I encourage you to check out this playlist. I will link for you up here and in the description box that goes through literally the history of the Sussexes and all the times that they have stepped in it or made mistakes or thrown other people under the bus or done these really heavily egotistical things that are very toxic. Because they're constantly engaging with the media, the other, potential motivation for it is to try to keep relevancy, because without it, they are completely irrelevant. The problem is they're doing it so much that people are kind of forcing them into irrelevancy because we're just so tired of hearing from them. But as a consequence of all of this, we get a lot more insight into their narcissistic traits than we do other celebrities who are surely just as narcissistic as the Sussexes, at least some of them, but are much more private about it. That in turn makes the Sussexes look to be some of the most prolific and notorious narcissists of present times, which they no doubt are, but they're also so public about it. They publicize everything, and therefore we see these obviously toxic, egotistical, narcissistic things unfold in the public view. If they kept a little bit more privacy and didn't publicize everything they did, they wouldn't be seen as so incredibly narcissistic because we just wouldn't have as much intel as we do. But lately we've seen a massive amount of evidence that demonstrates perfectly that of a communal narcissist. Someone who is high in narcissistic traits like we know the Sussexes to be, but who also has a priority or a motivation or a deep desire to be seen by their community, whether that be a professional community, their neighborhood and physical community where they live in. It could even be in large families, locally, within certain networks like school networks. It doesn't really matter. The point is that they want to be seen within that community, or in this case, for the Sussexes, you could expand it to just publicly viewed by all. They want to be publicly viewed by everybody in a certain way. Most people who have experienced a communal narcissist in their personal lives recognize it more on a smaller scale, but we can see it. If you just extrapolate it to a larger scale, then that's exactly what we have with Harry and Meghan here. These types of people commonly want to be seen as saviors, pillars of the community, extremely important and valuable, guiding the way of people. They want to be seen as leaders, as altruistic, setting an example, generous, any of the positive adjectives you can think of. They'll do things that will garner praise that on the surface look like a nice thing, but ultimately it's for the sole purpose of achieving that status of valuable to the community, leaders of whatever space it is that they're operating in, even if it's manipulative. It's the people closest to these communal narcissists that tend to notice the disconnect and contrast between the person's behavior, opinions, and way of life in private or within select relationships versus those outer-facing communal or public spaces that they operate in. For example, someone who does not extend any degree of understanding or generosity to their own family unit, for example, but is seemingly very generous and non-judgmental to people within the community. Perhaps they donate lots of things to people in the community who are virtual strangers to them, but are very cold and selfish in their personal life or their private life. Perhaps they act incredibly sympathetically to people or groups of people in public and within their community that they would simply never tolerate in their private life or relationships at all. In fact, might even speak poorly of certain groups of people behind closed doors, but then are doing nice things for those very same groups of people out in public just to garner and feed that adoration and desire to be seen as elevated within the community. So today we're going to take a closer look at communal narcissism and whether the assessment that Harry and Meghan have veered into this toxic territory are correct or not. Put simply, communal narcissism is a personality trait that involves behaving in a way that appears altruistic but is actually motivated by self-interest. These people may seem caring and helpful, but are simply more interested in gaining admiration and validation for themselves. Some key traits, as we've seen with Harry and Meghan over time in these patterns, so we can feel confident in saying these are traits we can attribute to Harry and Meghan, but in the context of this communal or like public facing, getting that reputation as humanitarians or leaders or, super good, include that inflated sense of self, that they are incredibly helpful, leading the way, giving you advice on what you should be doing in a disaster. The need for attention, expecting recognition for their help and feeling superior to others, as we have seen them call and inform the press and bring along videographers everywhere they go, including to disaster zones. Self-serving behavior, taking credit for others' accomplishments, blaming other people for mistakes, and seeking to be the center of attention. Seems pretty much exactly what Harry and Meghan do 100% of the time, but more recently or more notably, the discrepancy over who decided to delay the Netflix show, taking credit for delaying it if she wasn't the one who decided to delay it, would be exactly this sort of self-serving behavior. Manipulative behavior, using sympathy-seeking behaviors to maintain their influence or power. Having the press report that Harry and Meghan went to visit and comfort victims when their only sight of them hugging people were people that they know and work with. The entire coverage of the visit to Altadena could be categorized as manipulative behavior all by itself. Extreme dedication can be a trait of these sorts of people, being very dedicated to certain causes or charities, but neglecting other important tasks. I don't know that anybody would see Harry and Meghan as extremely dedicated. However, they do seem very protective of their image as philanthropists and do try really, really hard to push that to the detriment of actual real help. For example, billing a lot of their expenses to Archewell Foundation and other charities like Invictus, rather than just absorbing that cost themselves since they can't afford it. That's essentially taking money away from those charitable donations and using it for themselves. So that dedication or desire to go out and do the Nigeria trip and be seen this way and show up at Invictus looking this way outweighs what would actually be good for the causes themselves. And drama seeking is another common trait amongst these people, that they might stir up drama or conflict at work or volunteer events. Communal narcissists may appear to be good and caring friends or coworkers, but their motivations are ultimately self-serving. I would say all of these traits can be seen in Harry and Meghan, especially in the recent weeks. And while we can observe somebody seeming to be pretty high in narcissism or higher in their narcissistic traits, because remember, that is a sliding scale. Everybody has a degree of narcissism that will go within a range and operate within a range. It only becomes really problematic when it's so extreme that it's interfering with all sorts of different elements of your life and your job and those sorts of things. So while it's not something where you can say they are diagnosed as NPD or what have you, it is a worthy conversation to have, to be able to observe and recognize when someone does have these sorts of self-serving motivations, in particular within these community spaces, can be especially sneaky. While it's not even recognized as a formal diagnosis, communal narcissism refers to grandiose and inflated perceptions of oneself within a communal or community public sort of environment. Just what Harry and Meghan's statement and behavior these past weeks has demonstrated, that they have this inflated perception that they have the right to traipse around a disaster zone where the homeowners haven't even been let in and the locals haven't even been let in, that they have the right to take the mayor and first responders away from their duties and volunteers away from their duties, disrupting that process for the victims of this disaster, to escort them about, to bring their own videographers and film these things. I would be outraged if Harry and Meghan were filming my burned down home before I even got to be there, or at all, without my permission, which I would deny. While somebody who has a more communal narcissistic sort of a behavior pattern can also exhibit traditional narcissistic traits like craving personal glory, those that are more focused on the public-facing element of it and the communal element of it tend to focus on their moral deeds and acts of kindness to gain social status and attention. They often believe they have excellent social skills and high degrees of likability and helpfulness, but the community around them and those observing their behavior would disagree. Another key trait or sign that somebody is operating within this communal narcissistic space is that they only seem to show concern for societal needs in public, or they refuse to donate to causes anonymously. We have definitely seen some things along this line. The fact that Harry and Meghan said that they donated, but unlike a lot of other celebrities, failed to mention exactly where they donated and how much, means it could be, like I previously mentioned, simply donating to Archewell and then at a later date using Archewell to donate, say, part of a playground or donate a small amount to, for example, World Kitchen or something like that. It's certain that we haven't seen Harry and Meghan do any of this stuff anonymously, although they have said in their petulant statement that they're offended people would think it's just a photo op when they made it look like a photo op by their own choice and doing. They said that they've been doing work before this. Well, if that's the case, then they don't need to be announcing any of it. They don't need to be publicizing any of it. They don't need to be having the camera crew involved on their trip to Altadena. All of these things are mistakes that they made, which further indicates that there is this cloud of narcissism that is inhibiting good judgment here. That it's more important to them to be seen out and about in these areas amongst a dramatic and devastating situation is more important to them than doing it the right way or just the smart way. Just being smart about it is completely out of the question for them, because being seen in this way is what's most important to them, because they are currently operating exactly like a communal narcissist would. A distorted self-image is a huge theme that we've seen with Harry and Meghan, and this has only served to highlight it, that they think they are in a position to lead or offer formal statements. All of it indicates a deeper problem, that their self-image is completely out of touch with reality. Additionally, the grandiosity, to the max, focusing on the themes of altruism, generosity, and helping society, sees the communal narcissists like Harry and Meghan here wanting to be validated for what they do to help others, seeking approval for their charitable efforts. This is the only reason I could see why they would go ahead and publicize things the way that they have done, that they want to be seen as helping and getting approval and trying to spin their popularity back around the right way to stop being so heavily disliked, to try to save their public image. It's all down to wanting that approval for their charitable efforts. Because otherwise, they would have been able to see that that is not worth the negative press they would get for doing things in this out-of-touch manner that they did. Chris Berry, professor for the Department of Psychology of Washington State University, said, "Someone with communal narcissism becomes caught up in the idea of being special or outstanding in service to others. Communalism minus the narcissism is probably a desirable thing. Being friendly, being concerned about social problems, being trustworthy, caring for others. However, communal narcissism has that added element of really promoting oneself as being more communal than others. Examples could be, I am the best friend someone could have, I am the most helpful person I know, I will be able to solve world poverty, or in this case, my visit to Altadena will raise awareness to this issue. As if awareness needed to be raised. It does not. Besides those seeking the approval elements to this, apart from the very obvious desire to get that approval and to get those positive PR spins going for themselves, those self-serving elements, I would say the other element to this that really stands out as obviously part of Harry and Meghan's MO is only seeming to show concern for societal needs in public. In private, they do not exhibit the same motivations. For example, they might donate lavish amounts of money at an important event, but they wouldn't ever consider becoming an anonymous donor. Or they might post about needing to save the planet on social media without actually making a personal effort to do so. Hallmark problem with Harry and Meghan, the hypocrisy that we have been talking about for years now. And I do think for Harry that there's an element to the way he was brought up and his entrance into this type of work as a working royal when he was working alongside, for example, the Prince and Princess of Wales at the time, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, Catherine and William. He very much saw this sort of communal aspect to the work and the admiration that it did get. The royals have found a very good balance to doing good and drawing awareness to causes without constantly being criticized for perhaps not doing enough, for example. And Harry just simply cannot replicate that himself for two reasons. One, he is clearly not clever enough, and two, because he is operating in a for-profit space now. Because he does things to make money, including lie about people whenever it suits him. Same thing goes for Meghan. Lie about people whenever it suits her, and making money now. Anything that they do can be viewed as self-serving potentially. So that is part of the key problem and conflict here, that there really is no way forward for Harry and Meghan to just do these things that are truly good, in terms of like really dedicating your life to charitable efforts. Great, good, please do. But you can't really do it when you're also trying to make money off of everything and having videographers follow you around and publicizing everything, because it becomes a self-serving mess where then you start getting classified as a communal narcissist. Communal narcissism can manifest in various forms, often under the guise of altruism and helpfulness. Individuals with communal narcissism exhibit behaviors that seem supportive and community-oriented, but are ultimately self-serving. It's important to recognize these patterns as they can significantly impact interpersonal dynamics in different settings. And dishing out unsolicited advice is a huge part of this pattern. So is overstepping your boundaries, taking on responsibilities without adequate training or knowledge, and speaking about things that they really have no reason or right to be speaking about. Safe to say, this entire last week has only highlighted this element to Harry and Meghan's behavior and these negative threads to what they've been doing and the choices that they've been making. It's very difficult to view this past couple of weeks of Harry and Meghan's behavior without seeing the red flags for this very problem and pattern within what they've been doing. It's almost textbook communal narcissism at this point. And like I've said before, no one should be discouraged from helping out or pitching in or participating in charitable efforts, especially not just because of Harry and Meghan's approach and it being criticized. Helping out and giving back and all of these things are exactly what people have been advising Harry and Meghan to do for the past several years. The problem lies, like we said, within that conflict and kind of competing interests of making money and selling things, and even selling information and goods and video and things like that. Being a for-profit individual and trying to do things from a humanitarian, not-for-profit perspective, those things are always going to butt heads and be problematic. And you would have to be extraordinarily careful to avoid those sorts of conflicts in general, no matter who you were. But on top of it, we also see Harry and Meghan never putting in enough education or work or knowledge into these things before they go around talking about them and pointing at them and just telling people these things need to be solved. Without enough substance behind it, it doesn't work. And then they publicize everything in a way that it's like almost exclusively to try to get better press. It would be a very easy fix for them to just simply quietly do things and stop the projects that are for profit. To separate, to pick a lane, as we've talked about so many times. Choosing just one thing, really going for it for a few years, then expanding and having two elements to your public-facing roles. But they haven't gone about it that way. What do you think? Do Harry and Meghan seem to fit the definitions of a communal narcissist in your opinion? Leave it in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video, and I will see you next time. Have a happy day. Bye!